All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Integral Theory, Redpill. The Levels of Consciousness, written by Conrad Reicha. Available now, links in description. Stop asking for directions and start taking control. How feminized GPS culture is castrating men and why getting lost is the only way to be found. You know what I saw last Tuesday? A grown man, college educated, employed, owns a car, asked his girlfriend for permission to kiss her. Not a peck, not a nervous first move. A full-on, standing in a bar, 30-second makeout session, and he asked. She said sure, like he'd requested the salt, and I stood there watching this train wreck, thinking, this is how empires fall. Not with bombs, not with invasions. With men who need consent forms to touch a woman they're dating. What the hell happened to us? When did we trade in our swords for apology cards and our courage for compliance training? I'm not here to coddle your feelings. I'm here to rip the mask off the lie you've been fed since kindergarten, that being a man means being a servant, a sucker, or a silent provider, while the world burns your name in effigy. Wake up. The data doesn't lie. 85% of suicides are men. 97% of combat deaths are men. 70% of homeless are men. And yet, feminism holds rallies for women in tech, while real men die in silence, alone, unthanked. You think this is accidental? It's not. It's engineered. Like the family courts, where a father with clean hands, steady job, and love in his heart gets handed every other weekend like a used toaster. While the woman who cheated, lied, or abandoned the family walks away with the house, the kids, and child support. I've seen good men, men who did everything right, get erased like typos. And for what? So a culture can pretend women are fragile butterflies while they drop 60 million babies in the trash every year through abortion, more than all the battle deaths in World War II, and call it choice. Choice? That's not choice. That's power, female power, unchecked, unchallenged, and worshipped while men are told to sit down, shut up, and pay the bill. And don't even get me started on the cuckoldry rate. Studies say up to 30% of men are raising kids that aren't theirs, and the system does nothing. No outrage, no justice, just silence. Because the truth would shatter the myth that women are pure, men are predators, and the world owes women everything. It doesn't. And I'm done pretending it does. Sovereignty, the man who navigates the maze. I once watched a man in a Walmart parking lot circle the same block for 20 minutes because his GPS told him to recalculate. He didn't just miss the exit, he had no idea where he was without a voice telling him. That man wasn't lost in space, he was lost in mind, and he's not alone. I've seen grown men paralyzed at a street corner, eyes glued to a phone, waiting for permission to move. You know what that is? Infantilization. And it's not an accident, it's policy. Feminist urban planners design cities to be navigable only by app. They widen sidewalks, shrink parking, bury street signs, and make intersections look like abstract art installations, so men can't orient themselves without help. It's not about safety or efficiency, it's about control. They want men dependent, confused, and begging for directions like toddlers at a mall. But real men don't ask for directions, we find them. I learned this the hard way during a solo hike in the Rockies when my GPS died. No signal, no backup. Just me, a topo map, and the sun. I used terrain association, matched the ridgelines, spotted the drainage patterns, triangulated with a compass. In 6 hours, I walked out, not because I'm special, because I'm male. A 2005 Gallup poll found that 54% of men won't ask for directions, compared to 46% of women. Leftists call it male pride. I call it spatial integrity. Evolution didn't give men superior mental rotation and directional memory so we could outperform women on the amazing race. It gave it to us so we could survive. For 300,000 years, men navigated deserts, crossed oceans, hunted mammoths, all without Google Maps. The Polynesians, they sailed 3,000 miles across open ocean using only stars, wave swells, and the flight paths of birds. No instruments, no panic, just mastery. And they didn't hold hands and process their feelings about it. They did it. That's the masculine spirit, silent competence. But today's man, he's been neutered by convenience. GPS erases the need for memory. Dating apps erase the need for courage. HR departments erase the need for responsibility. And feminism, it's declared male spatial dominance toxic because it threatens their narrative of female superiority. They'll tell you men are aggressive for knowing where they're going. But aggression isn't violence, it's intention. And intention is the root of all achievement. When a Navy SEAL in Afghanistan got separated from his unit, he didn't cry, he didn't call HQ. He used dead reckoning, tracked his pace, monitored wind direction, used terrain features, and walked 40 miles through hostile territory to safety. No GPS, no backup, just will. That's sovereignty. And that's what's been stolen from us. I tested this on a trip to Prague. I dropped my phone in the Vltava River on day 1. No maps, no translation apps, just me, a phrase book, and the city. I didn't ask for help. I watched tram lines, followed pedestrian flows, read building architecture. Within hours, I could move like a local. Most tourists, they stand in the middle of Wenceslas Square, spinning like broken compasses, waiting for Wi-Fi. That's not travel, that's captivity. And it's the same in every domain. Men who can't find their way through a city also can't find their way through divorce court, child custody battles, or career decisions. They default to confusion because they've outsourced their cognition. But here's the truth. Directional confidence is decision-making confidence. A man who trusts his eyes trusts his judgment. A man who reads terrain reads people. This isn't mysticism, it's biology. MRI studies show men's brains light up differently in navigation tasks, with stronger activation in the hippocampus and parietal cortex. Women, they rely more on landmarks and verbal cues, adaptive for gathering, not hunting. But the left won't admit this. They'd rather claim men are socialized to not ask for help than admit that male brains are built to lead, and so they pathologize our instincts. They call our independence toxic masculinity. They call our competence patriarchy. They call our silence emotional repression, but I call it sovereignty, and I reclaim it. I train men in orienteering, land navigation, and urban recon, not as hobbies, but as rites of passage. Because when a man can walk into an unknown city and dominate it without assistance, he knows something deep. He is not a victim. He is not lost. He is not waiting for a woman, a government, or an app to save him. He sees the maze, and he walks through it. That's the red pill. Not rage, not resentment. Clarity. And when you have that, no ideology can enslave you. Marxism, it's a navigation error, trying to reach equality by destroying the map. Feminism, it's a denial of terrain, pretending valleys are peaks. Critical theory, it's fog, but a sovereign man, he reads the stars, he moves, and he wins. I was once like the rest, nodding along in seminars, swallowing the guilt like it was medicine, believing that my ancestors were nothing but slavers and colonizers until I picked up a book they never assigned in school, The History of Freedom in Antiquity by Benjamin Constant. I read it in a single night, flashlight in hand like a fugitive, and something cracked open. For the first time, I saw the real timeline. That liberty, science, self-governance, these weren't accidents. They were built brick by men who valued truth over comfort, duty over desire, and excellence over equality. And I realized the guilt wasn't for healing, it was for disarming. Whiteness as a witch hunt, the manufactured guilt of critical race theory. The greatest weapon against truth is not lies, but guilt. I learned this the hard way in 2017 when I watched a university professor, a man who once lectured on Newton's laws with reverence, stand trembling before a student tribunal, apologizing for assigning Paradise Lost because it centers white male narratives. Milton, the blind poet who gave us Satan as the ultimate rebel, reduced to a racial offender. This was not education. This was ritual humiliation. This was heresy. And it wasn't about race at all. It was about power and the destruction of the West from within. Critical race theory, CRT, isn't about justice. It's about conquest. It's the intellectual equivalent of planting a flag on a conquered city and declaring, "You built this, then you must have stolen it." The irony is, the West is the only civilization in history that ever abolished slavery on moral principle, while the rest of the world either still practices it or never outlawed it, and yet we are the ones branded as eternal sinners. The 1619 Project, funded by the New York Times, claims that American prosperity was built on slavery and that all progress stems from the lash. That's not history. That's propaganda. It ignores the steam engine, the printing press, the scientific method, and the individualist philosophy that actually drove progress. It ignores that the average life expectancy in sub-Saharan Africa today is still less than the average life expectancy in pre-industrial Europe. It ignores that the top 20 countries by GDP per capita are all majority white or founded on Western institutions. This isn't privilege, it's the result of reason, delayed gratification, and moral responsibility. When a culture rewards work, punishes laziness, and values truth, it thrives. When it rewards victimhood, excuses failure, and lies about reality, it collapses. CRT doesn't want to fix racism. It wants to inflate it, so it can justify the seizure of power by those who scream the loudest. The concept of whiteness as a toxic identity didn't exist before the 1990s. Ruth Frankenberg, a cultural studies academic, invented it as a tool to pathologize European heritage. Before that, white was just a descriptor, like tall or left-handed. Now it's a crime. And who benefits? The same people who run diversity training seminars for 10,000 a day. The same people who get tenure for writing nonsense like "moth is white supremacy." I saw a school district in Oregon ban algebra because it was culturally biased. Meanwhile, Shanghai students are solving differential equations while our kids are learning how to apologize for their DNA. This is not education, this is sabotage. I've read CRT texts cover to cover, red pen in hand. I've underlined every logical fallacy, every false premise, every emotional blackmail. And here's what I found. CRT is not an argument, it's a spell. It uses guilt like a hypnotist uses a pendulum. You are responsible for everything bad that ever happened to anyone who isn't white. You must feel bad. You must give up your culture. You must surrender. And the spell works on weak men, but not on me, not anymore. I teach young men to use the trivium, grammar to define terms. What is whiteness? Who gets to define it? Logic to expose contradictions. If all white people are oppressors, how do you explain white abolitionists, white scientists, white janitors who never owned slaves, and rhetoric to shame the shamers? I had one student, a quiet kid from Wisconsin, who told me he was made to write an apology letter to Black Americans in high school. I told him, burn it, then write a letter thanking your ancestors for building sewers, electricity, and antibiotics. He did, he cried. He woke up. CRT's spiritual danger is that it replaces God with race. It says your salvation comes not from virtue, but from victimhood points. It says your worth is determined by your skin, not your soul. This is not Christianity. This is Satanism. It inverts good and evil. It turns pride in achievement into shame. It turns fatherhood into oppression. And it's working. White male suicide rates are soaring. Family court strips fathers of children over false accusations, and men are arrested for online comments while actual criminals walk free. Why? Because the system doesn't want fathers, it wants subjects. And CRT is the ideological battering ram that justifies their destruction. So here's my remedy: form reading circles. Grab the Republic, Leviathan, The Wealth of Nations. Read them aloud. Laugh at the nonsense. Highlight the truths. Arm yourselves with logic and beauty. Because Homer, Locke, Newton, and Shakespeare are not white writers. They are human writers. Truth has no race. And when the CRT cultists come for your books, your statues, your history, stand tall and say, "You will not erase what we built. You will not poison our sons. You will not win." Because the West is not guilty. The West is guiltless. And guiltless men do not apologize. They conquer. I've watched too many men walk off the battlefield of life with wounds they didn't see coming. Wounds not from war, not from nature, but from a society that rewards betrayal while branding loyalty as guilt. I used to believe chivalry was noble. Then I saw it used as a noose. Now I know when the rules are rigged against you, virtue becomes suicide. And that brings us to the man who pulled a woman from drowning water only to find himself drowning in court. Double standards and the collapse of justice, when men are guilty until proven male. I saved her life and she sued me for touching her. That's what John Doe told the court after pulling a woman from a sinking car in Florida. He broke her window, dragged her out, performed CPR. Then she woke up, saw a man's hands on her body, and screamed assault. The media called her brave. The police arrested him. His employer fired him to avoid controversy. No charges were dropped. She got a settlement. He got divorce papers. This isn't rare. It's routine, and it's not about one woman. It's about a system designed to punish men for existing. Let's talk numbers, since facts are the kryptonite of feminist fairy tales. Men make up 80% of workplace fatalities. Every year, thousands die in mines, on roofs under scaffolding, building the world women walk through in 200 athleisure. Where are the feminist marches for these men? Where is the outrage? Silent. Because feminist activism isn't about equality. It's about female supremacy. They don't want fairness, they want tribute. When a woman dies in a spa accident, it's a national tragedy. When a man dies cleaning sewers, it's just part of the job. Try flipping that script. Imagine a women's strike for male construction deaths. You can't, because it doesn't exist, and it never will. History laughs in the face of modern hypocrisy. Joan of Arc wore armor, led armies, burned her enemies, and the church made her a saint. Today, a man wears a dress on a college campus, and the media calls him brave. But a man who wears a uniform, fights in a war, and comes home broken. He's toxic. He's emotionally unavailable. He's told to check his privilege while sleeping in a VA hospital with shrapnel in his spine. The double standard isn't just absurd, it's weaponized betrayal. We glorify female masculinity but criminalize male virtue. Leftism doesn't care about justice, it cares about power. And its entire legal architecture is built on one assumption: men are guilty until proven male, the US. Sentencing Commission confirmed in 2017 that men receive 63% longer prison sentences than women for identical crimes. Same crime, same evidence, different gender, different outcome. This isn't justice, it's judicial misandry. It's baked into the system like rat poison in cake. And don't think the courts don't know it, they do. They just don't care because the law isn't blind, it's a woman and she's angry. Look at Me Too. A woman says a man looked at her funny and his life implodes. No evidence, no defense, no trial. Just Twitter, tears, and termination. Meanwhile, when a man is falsely accused, like the 8% of rape cases later proven false by DNA, National Registry of Exonerations, he gets no apology, no job back, no reputation, just a locked apartment and a handgun. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed: protect women at all costs, even when the cost is male extinction. Joe Biden stood on a stage and said, "We're in a battle for the soul of the nation." He framed men as the enemy, women as the victims. as if the 1.3 million American men who died in war were just collateral damage in a feminist origin story. 97% of combat deaths in US history are male. But sure, Joe, let's talk about the soul. The soul of a nation isn't found in safe spaces or pronouns. It's found in men who march into fire so others don't have to. But you won't hear that from the left, because they don't honor sacrifice, they exploit it. So here's the praxis. Stop being useful. Stop paying for dates. Stop taking the blame. Stop risking your body for women who'd sue you for saving their life. You're not a servant. You're not a resource. You are a man. And the only reason you're being treated like livestock is because you keep acting like one. No more unilateral sacrifice. If she wants chivalry, she earns it. If she wants protection, she proves loyalty. No more free passes. No more martyrdom for ungrateful beneficiaries. They taught you to be chivalrous. They taught her to weaponize tears. So she cries harassment when you say good morning and you apologize like a trained dog. Meanwhile, she posts thirst traps on Instagram, tags freedom, and calls men pigs. This isn't psychology, it's training. And you're the lab rat pushing the lever for a crumb. Christianity honored male sacrifice. Christ died for humanity. But today, men who provide, protect, and sacrifice are called dead inside. You're mocked for being dependable, called boring for being responsible. While the woman who abandons her kids for a yoga retreat in Bali is finding herself, the church once said sacrifice was holy. Now the culture says it's toxic, which tells you everything about where we are and how far we've fallen. So arm yourself with the trivium, grammar, name the lie, call it what it is. Gynocentrism, logic, follow the asymmetry. Women get protection, men get punishment. Rhetoric, demand reciprocity. No more one-way duties. If she wants a knight, she wears the armor too. If not, she walks alone. The age of male martyrdom is over. The age of male sovereignty begins now. I've seen it too many times. Men reduced to trembling supplicants, begging for scraps of validation, while women roll their eyes and swipe left. It's not attraction they're killing. It's themselves. I used to believe the lie that kindness alone would win her over. That if I just listened, empathized, and never made her uncomfortable, she'd fall for me. But the truth hit me like a gut punch at a bar in Berlin, watching a woman pull a stranger into a dark corner after one smirk and a whispered line. No forms, no disclaimers, just action. That's when I realized women don't desire safety. They desire certainty, and the man who hesitates, especially with something as primal as a kiss, is broadcasting weakness, not virtue. Passion, power, and the kiss of truth, reclaiming male vitality from feminist freeze. Nice guys finish last, Henry Kissinger. And let's be honest, nice guys don't even finish. They're too busy apologizing for existing. I watched a friend of mine, let's call him Steve, spend 2 months texting a woman, asking permission to hang out, then asking permission to hold her hand, then, God help us, asking permission to kiss her. He sent a full paragraph of emotional labor. I really like you and I don't want to make you uncomfortable, so if you're okay with it, she ghosted him. Not because she didn't like him. She ghosted him because she didn't respect him. Meanwhile, the guy who took her out the next week leaned in, kissed her at the end of dinner. No speech, no trembling, no consent seminar, and she texted him the next morning. That was hot. Let's not pretend this is about ethics, it's about energy. One man treated romance like a job interview. The other treated it like a conquest. Guess which one won? James Bond doesn't say, would you be open to the ideal of a kiss, given our emotional connection and mutual attraction? He doesn't ask, he acts. He's not a corporate HR consultant. He's a spy with a Walther PPK and a libido that could power a small nation, and women flock to him. Feminists rage about Bond because he embodies what they fear, unapologetic masculine agency. They don't hate him for being violent, they hate him for being desired. They don't want men to be dangerous. They want men to be manageable. And so they've launched a full-scale war on male desire, rebranding it as toxic if it isn't mediated by guilt, apology, and endless negotiation. But here's the truth. Women are hardwired to respond to confidence. Not arrogance, not cruelty, confidence. And when you're new to that, you don't create equality. You create a generation of men who can't even close the deal on a first date. Let's talk facts. According to the NIH in 2021, erectile dysfunction in men under 40 has tripled since 2000, not due to obesity, smoking, or diabetes. The leading predictors now: psychological distress and performance anxiety, both of which are fueled by feminist propaganda that tells men their natural urges are dangerous. You're not sick because of your biology. You're sick because you've been brainwashed into thinking your masculinity is a crime. You've been told to ask before you touch, to check in emotionally, to deconstruct your privilege, while women in private admit they're turned off by it. A 2023 Match.com survey found that dating profiles with dominant language, "I'll take you out," "I know what I want," get 3 times more matches than "I'm a good listener" bios. Women say they want nice guys, but their swiping behavior says otherwise. There's a cognitive dissonance here, and it's killing male vitality. This isn't about game. This is about biology. Women subconsciously test men for confidence through physical initiation. It's a primal audition, and if you hesitate, you fail. Evolution didn't design women to respond to beta providers who ask permission to kiss, like they're requesting a raise. It designed them to respond to men who lead. A study from the University of Albany found that women rate dominant kissing styles, initiated, firm, confident, as significantly more attractive. But here's the twist. Those same women are taught to label such men as aggressive or creepy in public. Why? Because feminism needs men to be afraid. Fear is the weapon of control. If men are afraid to act, they're easy to manipulate. They'll pay child support for kids that aren't theirs. 4% of paternity tests show misattributed parentage, but in high conflict divorces, it jumps to 30% and they'll lose custody anyway. Because family courts are rigged against fathers, they'll be arrested for saying hello too loudly, while real predators walk free. And when they break under the weight of it all, they'll die by suicide at 4 times the rate of women. But no one calls that a crisis. I once coached a guy who'd been divorced, bankrupted, and alienated from his kids. He was bitter, broken, soft. I told him to stop thinking like a victim and start acting like a man. We worked on posture, eye contact, voice tone, basic dominant signals. Then I told him to go on a date and kiss her first without asking. He resisted. "What if she slaps me?" I said. "Then she wasn't worth it." But she won't, because women don't slap men they're attracted to. They slap beta orbiters who think they've earned a kiss by buying dinner. He did it. She kissed him back. And then she said, "I was wondering when you'd man up." That's the real test, not consent, courage. Most modern men have been raised on consent culture so hard, they freeze like deer in headlights. They don't fail because they're immoral. They fail because they've been deprogrammed from their instincts. Look at the Song of Solomon. "I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me." Not his desire must be negotiated within a safe, trauma-informed space. No desire, it's divine, it's sacred. The text celebrates male pursuit and female surrender, not as oppression, but as harmony. This is the living spirit of Western civilization: passion, beauty, truth, courage. Feminism doesn't oppose patriarchy. It opposes reality. It wants to rewrite biology, but biology doesn't care about your ideology. Women are not oppressed by male desire. They are activated by it. And when men suppress it, they don't create equality. They create emptiness. A man who won't kiss first is a man who won't lead, and a man who won't lead is a man who won't live. The trivium of seduction isn't complex. Grammar, read her signals: eye contact, proximity, touch. Logic: if she's flirting, she wants you to act. Hesitation is illogical. Rhetoric: kiss like a king, not a peasant begging for scraps. The kiss isn't romance. It's a biopolitical test. It's about dominance, desire, presence. It's the moment where a man either claims his masculinity or surrenders to feminist conditioning. And right now, millions of men are surrendering. They're not evil. They're ignorant. They've been lied to, but the truth is coming. And when it does, it won't ask permission. It will take what is rightfully yours. You think you're lost? No, you were never lost, just lied to. For years, they told you to ask for directions, to be sensitive, to wait your turn to apologize for existing. They fed you feminist propaganda like it was mother's milk. then wondered why you couldn't find your way out of a one-way street. Let me tell you something they don't want you to know. Men don't get lost, they adapt. They dominate, they navigate. The Polynesian wayfarers didn't have GPS. They had stars, and you have testosterone, spatial reasoning, and 200,000 years of evolutionary programming to lead, not follow. Yet they've turned you into a corporate eunuch afraid to kiss a woman without a signed consent form. Pathetic. Worse, it's deadly. Men are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide than women. CDC 2023. And not because we're broken, because we've been stripped of purpose, demonized for strength, and punished for providing. Feminism didn't liberate women. It enslaved men. It turned marriage into a legal trap where 70% of divorces are filed by women, Pew Research, yet men still pay child support, lose custody, and get arrested for back payments. Try that with dog ownership, you'll get laughed out of court. And don't get me started on abortion. Over 60 million unborn American males erased since Roe v. Wade. While men are still expected to protect and provide for what? A womb that can delete you before you're born. Wake up. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed to break you. But here's the secret they fear most. You already won. Just by reading this, you've seen the Matrix. You know women aren't angels. They're hypergamous, status-seeking, and biologically wired to test your dominance. Just ask David Buss, UCLA evolutionary psychologist. You know CRT is a cult, not a curriculum. You know whiteness is a guilt-laden fiction used to shame the most productive civilization in history into surrender. And you know this, a man who kisses with confidence, leads without apology, and navigates by instinct isn't toxic. He's transcendent, so go, walk into that city like you own it. Kiss like you mean it. Read the stars, not the algorithm. They'll call you arrogant. Good, let them. Arrogance builds cathedrals. Humility builds group homes. You are not their slave. You are not their punchline. You are the living spirit of the West, unbroken, unshackled, and awake. Now go tell the others. And now the sponsored book Introduction Integral Theory Redpill, The Levels of Consciousness. Society's collapsing, and you feel it. I did too. For years, I struggled against a culture that shames strength while demanding weakness from men. Feminism and Marxism have pushed an infantile worldview, poisoning Western civilization. I watched marriages fail, businesses crumble, and men stripped of purpose. Then I discovered integral theory. It wasn't just philosophy, it was a survival manual. By mapping consciousness levels from archaic to integral, I shattered illusions about equality and reclaimed timeless masculine virtues. This book distills that hard-won insight into battle-ready tactics. You learn to decode hidden societal structures using Ken Wilber's quadrants: subjective, objective, cultural, systemic. We'll dissect Jungian shadow work to reclaim repressed power and Stoic-Christian discipline to forge unbreakable resolve. Chapters like Mastering the Shadow and Stoic-Christian discipline systems provide tools to dominate business hierarchies, evade state marriage traps, and build generational legacy. You'll engineer exponential gains through 1% daily compounding and develop psychopath immunity shields. This is about commanding reality, not reacting to collapse. This book is for rational men ready to lead. If you're tired of double binds, shamed for lacking masculinity, yet demonized for showing it, this is your blueprint. We reject cultural Marxism's lies. Gender equality is a fantasy. Men must lead, women mother. Vulnerability, a trap. True strength lies in humility, integrity, and radical responsibility. Draw from biblical wisdom, Stoic practices, and productivity science. Mine experience, plan relentlessly. Lift weights, take cold showers, meditate. Guard your perception. Your genome equips you to adapt if you apply yourself. Non-target readers, put this down now. If you champion feminism, postmodernism, or victimhood, you'll hate every page. Go knit or binge Netflix. This isn't for you. For the red-pilled man, your hero's journey starts here. We'll resurrect your ego through ego death and resurrection, decrypt synchronicity, and activate integral intelligence. Stand at the threshold of the integral civilization. Your legacy awaits. Begin. Integral Theory Redpill, The Levels of Consciousness. written by Conrad Reicher. Buy now, links in description.